Even though I have read the Bible from cover to cover several times, it just like hit me between the eyes. The book of life is talked about in the Old Testament.
Oh, yeah.
Moses went to the Lord after they made the gods of gold, and he pleaded before the Lord, if you will forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray, out of your book which you have forgiven. And then the Lord answered Moses, whoever has sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. And then in Psalm 69:28, let them be blotted out of the book of the living and not be written with the righteous. So you don't blot something out that hasn't been written.
It seems to me that God writes everyone in the book of life. And again, this kind of makes you feel like it's God's desire that everybody be in the book of life, and they are only blotted out by their own choice.
By their choice to
Right. And
not to receive him.
now, when we get this all down to its least common denominator, and there's a lot of factors to consider, because for the most part in the institutional church, the whole metaphysics of this has not been studied, researched, and defined. For instance, the different wills of God, the fact that God does say, hey, if we don't come down and do this, this is going to happen. Now, if everything's predetermined, why does God concern himself with these interventions in time to prevent something from happening that he doesn't want to happen? In the parable of the soils, we see that the seed is spread, and the seed does not, what would you call it, germinate in the ground, which is the hearts of men, because Satan comes and snatches the seed away before that can happen. Now, Paul said, we battle not against flesh and blood, but principalities, worldly principalities. Christians don't have a full-orbed metaphysical picture of the reality that the Bible presents, so that we then can take that information and make a conclusion regarding things like predestination and so on and so forth. You can't get around the fact that God does predetermine things. But that's a source of an abundant form of comfort for us. Like, you watch the news and oh my goodness, but you know what? I don't worry about Israel. I know how it's all going to turn out. I know that before I'm out of here, there isn't going to be a World War III. I know that. Okay? So I don't worry about it. So God predetermining, or at least knowing the beginning of the end, so what's predetermined? Where is the gap filled between what God knows is going to happen and what God predetermines is going to happen? It seems at this point that God knows what's going to happen, but intervenes in the future and in time to guarantee the outcome that he wants. So where does free will and man's choice fit into all of this? I don't think Christians have been taught enough about biblical metaphysics and the reality of the world that we live in to make a judgment in the whole big picture.
This whole thing that we've been talking about predestination, predetermination, and all of this. I don't think Calvin, the people who follow his teaching, the Calvinists of our day, realize how much his theology contributed to the theology of deism. Deism believed there is a God.
Mm-hmm.
He created all things.
Mm-hmm.
He wound it up like a clock and threw it out and is letting it unwind.
Right.
And does not intervene in the affairs, in the personal affairs of
James
men.
Madison.
All of our founding fathers believed that.
Right.
They believed in God. They even prayed to Him.
Right.
But they did not believe that God intervened in the affairs of men, that men was responsible for changing the tide in the future, because they had was given the ability when God threw the clock out and told it to unwind.
The American Constitution and Declaration of Independence was solely a pushback against European theology. It was.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely was. So now you've got all of these yahoos in our day, not excluding Mike Huckabee, speaking of, our Puritan fathers and, these heroic Europeans who came over the pond, who started the United States and were the underpinnings or the foundations of our Declaration of Independence. Hogwash. The Declaration of Independence was a pushback against those, as John Emmel calls them, murdering mystic despots. Okay? I mean, our country wasn't founded on the Salem witch hunts. That was a European thing. Okay? Bad history. And really, our think tank and the conferences are, an attempt in our neck of the woods to educate contrary to that. And I think the conferences are going to grow every year in that regard.
We have a message that we want to share in June, and I hope people take the scales off of their ears and hearts and choose to come and learn.
Well, and the studies that you have done has been a real eye-opener for you. In fact, it kept you awake last night. So, and that's good. More people need to lose sleep over the fact that neo-Calvinism, or a return to authentic Protestantism, is now taking over the church in a revival, and what that all means. And people email me and make comments on the internet, or I am just so confused by this, wanting to get in bed with the Catholic Church. Well, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, Augustine never repented of being a Catholic.
No, Augustine wouldn't have.
Right.
Calvin never repented of.
Neither did Luther.
Nor Luther.
Right. So basically, the ideology is exactly the same. And that is, what is that ideology? That the selected or predestined few must lead the great unwashed masses, and we need the government's help to do that. So it's all going back to being that way, and in fact that's what we see in the book of Revelation now. Yeah. Is the book of Revelation not the marriage of church and state on steroids? Mm-hmm. It absolutely is. So it's going back to that, come heck or high water. So, all right. That's finished.